If you voted for Donald Trump in 2016, but won't in 2020, what changed your mind? I feel like I was flippant in 2016. I'm in a blue state that doesn't split electoral votes, so I felt like I could do it and it didn't matter. Since then, I've just grown as a person. I've gotten married, watched my husband get diagnosed with a disease that would bankrupt us if I didn't have a government job, and it changed how I saw people. No one should have to decide to go bankrupt to get treatment they need to survive. I'm now willing to pay a little more so no one has to suffer, like we were so fortunate not to. I've also taken multiple diversity and equity trainings since 2016 that have helped me understand concepts like how saying all lives matter dismisses the point that some lives aren't being treated like they matter. Just personal growth and this sense of not wanting anyone to suffer. I was disappointed with a few things that he did here and there, but I wasn't that aware of the scope of something so it didn't seem so bad. Then COVID happened. He didn't wear a mask until recently and suddenly many of his supporters became anti-maskers. Instead of leading by wearing a mask and encouraging people to wear a mask, he continued to not want anyone to wear a mask at events. Then he started encouraging bad treatment of protesters. I literally went from a lifelong Republican to a Democrat within months. It kinda freaks me out that I changed so quickly, but I realized that they've been using brute force to do what you think is right despite what's morally right or what the country wants is just plain wrong. I'm less worried about my taxes going up a little if it means preventing a child dying from malnutrition. I'm less concerned about making sure there's no welfare fraud if it helps people that truly need it. BTW, I was always socially liberal. I just felt like most social issues didn't belong in politics. I've always wanted prison reform, equal rights for everyone, but in realizing most Republican politicians do not want those things, I feel like my eyes have been opened, and I literally used to think liberals were oblivious to taxes going up. I was wrong. I'm less worried about my taxes going up a little if it means preventing a child dying from malnutrition. I'm less concerned about making sure there's no welfare fraud if it helps people that truly need it. Realist shit right there. You're awesome, dude. I was a Republican by upbringing. I watched no other news but Fox News via my parents until I left for college. Once I gained my independence living across the country for college, I started to develop my own views. I started to get my news from more reputable sources like the app. I started to realize that many of the views I picked up from watching Fox all the time were very one-sided and often didn't result from an understanding of the full picture. And it definitely took a while, but once I started looking at multiple sources, the biased wording common in Fox articles is easy to spot and easy to avoid no matter the source, both right and left-wing bias. I should add, at the time of the 2016 election, I was on the fence. Unfortunately, I still held on to the last shred of the Republicans are the good guys. Therefore I must vote for them, and also the Clintons are power-hungry tyrants that I had left over from my childhood. I regret that vote, but that election night marked the last time for at least the foreseeable future that I vote Republican. I'm currently a registered Democrat, though I consider myself a fairly moderate liberal, and I find this position much better suits what I actually believe, not just what I'm told I believe like when I was a kid, and what I find important in how society is governed. TL. Dr. Fox News is basically propaganda, and it's super obvious if you get your news from multiple reputable sources, which changed my views. I had the same experience. It is amazing what 10 minutes of online searching can do to broaden your knowledge. I understand that my parents' generation was used to getting information from one source years ago, but today there is no excuse. Just ignorance. I moved out of my parents' house, experienced college, people from many backgrounds, and am in a career where I know what a good leader looks like, and he is most certainly not that. Honestly, this is why Republicans from poorer, predominantly poorly educated areas of the country are against college. People tend to go more left once they are exposed to different cultures and many different types of people, and happens at college pretty often. and with moving to larger cities. It makes sense if you consider that people in small town rural America often never leave their state, let alone spend much time on bigger cities. They aren't everyone around other people enough to fully realize that they aren't like the talking points make them out to be. And it becomes hilarious how Republicans are now so concerned about sending kids back to school during a pandemic when they have an anti-college mindset anyways. I cold vote in 2016, but I would have voted for Trump. I will be voting for Biden this year, pulling out and leaving the Kurds to be massacred, never listening to military advisors, committing treason, grossly mishandling a global health crisis at the national level, tear gassing his own people, to take a picture with a Bible he definitely doesn't read. Some things are more important than lower taxes. The first person I've seen mention the Kurds. Wish more Americans felt a sense of obligation towards pro-democracy allies. I know this was huge for some people in the military. I haven't served, but the majority of my family has. My cousin, who is the typical I'm a man and men don't feel things kind of southern boy, and he cried over this. He served in the Middle East and worked directly with Kurdish soldiers. He had some that he remained in contact with, and he hasn't heard from most of them since this all went down, and doesn't know if they stopped talking to him because he's American or because something happened to them. It's awful. Edit has voting for Biden. He'll be voting for Biden after voting for Trump in 2016. Hit politicalization of a pandemic and poor response to it are the main reason for the change. I also strongly dislike the way he deals with Russia and the cronyism amongst his cabinet. I didn't agree with everything George Bush or Obama did it stood for, but I believe they were trying to improve the country in the best way they saw how. Trump seems to be only selfishly motivated and had made a mockery of our nation's highest elected office. I'm not proud to live in this country as long as he is at its helm. I look forward to November 3rd. The underrated portion, and the portion I don't think many will point out, is how you mention that you believe Obama was at least trying to improve things. It is very, very difficult to get a Republican to say that under any circumstances. OMG, then saying that is like an allergy to them. I don't understand why. I genuinely believe Barack Obama did some truly shitty things for this country, as has just about every president since and including Nixon, minus perhaps Jimmy Carter, do nothing. But is it really that hard to look at 2008 and then look at 2016 and say the country was in a better place in 2016 than it was in 2008? I work for the United States Post Office. It's a shit show with this newly appointed PMG. I'm concerned about my future employment, my livelihood. Wish us luck in 2020. I mean, I'm glad you're not voting for him. But this just seems like more of the other sentiments in this thread, which amount to essentially I was happy to hire a leopard to eat other people's faces, but I don't like it when they come to eat mine. Well, until it happens to you. You can be convinced by multiple industries that are supported by billions of dollars annually that the other people deserve it. Sometimes it takes personal experience, either going through it yourself or seeing it happen to someone you're close to break through all the noise around you. The key is remembering that many of these people literally exist in different worlds from us. The way they access information about the outside world is mediated by a set of people designed to make them constantly fear or hate the other side. It's like a cult. First you cut people off from anything that might challenge them. Then you only feed them information telling them how righteous they are, how terrible everyone else is, and how they must be eternally vigilant for being under threat. You know what? You're totally right. I need to be more understanding of them, even if they aren't of us. Thanks for explaining that. Yeah, it's clear he has distilled the base and reveled the cult following. I'm watching it happen to people I know. I thought he was better than Hillary, the duck politicians type of thing. I hate him. I truly hate him and what he has done to our country. Duck this piece of shit. I feel this one. I actually hate him, and I don't use that word loosely. Grew up in middle of nowhere conservative town. Took what my parents and others said as fact and adopted their political views. I never did my own research on politics. Since then I've met amazing people who've helped me see things from a different perspective. Now I see the issues with what I believed before. Happy to say that I do much more research and don't just go in the voting booth blind. I'm now pretty far from conservative. Me in a nutshell. Same. It's almost like when you get out of the bubble of white rural America you see there's a lot more country, a lot more people, a lot more perspectives, and a lot you really didn't know just hard. When I go home to my openly homophobic father. Same. Had racism and homophobia conversations with my parents recently. Didn't end well. You're not alone. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.